WKYC Studios and 3 News Investigates, this is Bomb City, USA, with your host, investigator Rachel Polansky.
Imagine pulling off one of the biggest bank heists of our time.
Cash and diamonds and gold.
Stealing millions of dollars.
One bag was so big, I looked like Santa Claus coming walking up the hill.
Some of which was rumored to be dirty money, belonging to President Richard Nixon.
I really didn't believe it at first, but, you know, coming from a source like Jimmy Hoffa, who got around good, head of the Teamsters, you know, he knew, and he had a lot of underhanded stuff too, and he was friends with the mafia.
Only to be found out because one of your friends forgot to bring the fake IDs.
One of the downfalls started right at the beginning when my friend Charlie forgot to bring the phony ID, and I went against my better judgment and still got on the plane.
In episode 1, we talked about the rise and fall of the Irishman, Danny Green. In episode 2, we dug into the mafia boss who flipped on his Cleveland crime family and helped take down 5 New York City godfathers. Now, we're taking a closer look at a crew of mobbed-up burglars who pulled off one of the biggest break-ins ever and almost got away with it. My name is Rachel Polansky. I'm an investigative reporter at WKYC Studios in Cleveland, Ohio. And this is Bomb City, USA, a true story about organized crime, murder, and a fight for control that left everyone dead or behind bars. This is episode 3, The Heist. A score of a lifetime. That's what Youngstown burglar Emil Dinzio was thinking in 1972, when a Cleveland mobster told him about the job.
President Nixon having $30 million, you know, in a bank in California. Richard
Nixon was still in the White House. Watergate hadn't happened yet. And according to the tipster, a stash of $30 million, some of which was rumored to belong to Nixon, was sitting in a bank vault in California. Nixon had allegedly been shaking down the U.S. dairy farmers, promising to raise the price of raw milk if the farmers' lobby gave him a big contribution. While it sounded unbelievable, Dinzio said it came from a well-known source.
I really didn't believe it at first, but, you know, coming from a source like Jimmy Hoffa, who got around good, head of the Teamsters, you know, he knew, and he had a lot of underhanded stuff too, and he was friends with the mafia. Jimmy Hoffa and the mafia were pretty tight. He told us where it was, Laguna Niguel. We didn't know where Laguna Niguel was, but we got ready and we took a trip out there. We drove out there.
The tipster said the loot was in a safety deposit box at the United California Bank in Laguna Niguel, a sleepy beach town about 1 hour south of LA. So Emil Dinzio, along with his brother James Dinzio and his brother-in-law Chuck Mulligan, rented a car and headed west, arriving in the Golden State a few days later.
We found Laguna Niguel, and the bank said perfect, you know, so we put surveillance on the bank and all that.
The bank was located inside a shopping center, so they spent the first night watching what happened after dark. While there were a few nearby stores, none of them stayed open 24/7. This was a good thing, because it meant people wouldn't be around. Later, a cleaning crew arrived at the bank, and Emil's brother James followed them to get a better look inside. That's when he noticed a stainless steel door protecting the bank's vault. Just what Emil was hoping for.
We knew what the vault was made of. It was made out of cement blocks and a 1-inch plate inside. The only thing protecting people's money is the alarm system. You beat the alarm, you beat the bank. That's what it boils down to. The only thing that protects the money or the safety deposit boxes is the alarm system.
Meanwhile, Emil was making his way to the back of the bank to check out the alarm system. And when he looked up, he could read the brand name, Diebold. More good news.
The bell outside, it was a Diebold bell, but it'll start ringing too if the alarm goes off. It has 3 bolts in it. The bolt in the lower right-hand corner is the only one that didn't have a tamper switch on it. Like, if you could back it out, it was a long bolt. You could back it out and the alarm ain't going off. So we knew that from experiences.
Clearly this was not Emil's first rodeo. The 85-year-old who has a full head of white hair and is wearing a crisp white polo and khaki slacks has a big smile on his face when he greets me in Youngstown. We're not far from the town he spent much of his youth.
I grew up on a farm in Goshen Township, Ohio. We were poor as poor could be. Our house didn't have electric. And there were 7 of us.
He cuts himself off mid-sentence, pauses, and says, "But you want to know how I got into the burglary business, right?" I nod my head yes.
At first, me and my brother was sticking up banks. We never hurt nobody. We'd say, hit the ground, they hit the ground. We'd grab money.
He guesses that he and his brother James are responsible for more than 70 bank robberies and burglaries in the United States. And it's not something he's ashamed of.
First bank we made was down there in West Virginia across from Steubenville, Ohio. Maybe a couple years after that, my sister Palma, she got a job in the Boardman Plaza at the Isley's Dairy Store. And I would take her to work. I'm sitting out there taking her to work, and I see this guy inside the bank, and he's down by the night depository, and he's pulling out bags. And I'm looking at that, and I said, shit, that's where the money is.
At first, he says they did stick-ups. Then they graduated to safety deposit boxes and bank vaults.
So I told my brother James, I said, hey, you got to see this. We go there, we watch, and he says, God damn. I said, that's what we got to do, how to do that. So there was a sign on the window of the bank. It said, premises protected by Diebold. What the hell's Diebold? We don't know nothing about Diebold. So we used ordinary phone book, and we looked it up, and the Diebold Corporation was in Canton, Ohio. So we went up to Canton, Ohio, all fenced up. There's a guard out by the road, and we just watched that night for a couple of nights, and he didn't even come out of the shed. So we slipped under the fence, over the fence. First building we hit is where they was making safes, and it was the round door safes. And there was square ones too. There's cement safes, everything. There was doors laying up, getting ready to be put on safes and everything. So that night we stole one of them doors and we took it with us. It was a big one. It weighed maybe 300 pounds, 250, 300. It's real thick and it's special steel, like real hard.
You heard right. They stole a factory door to a safe. Then they created a special jig and figured out the best way to crack it open.
We said, hell, these bank vaults ain't shit, you know what I mean? They fall apart, you know. So that's how we learned how to blow open bank vaults.
So how old were you at this time?
16,
Wow.
17.
Fast forward to 1972, and Dinzio is now 36 years old, a seasoned safecracker, standing outside the United California Bank in Laguna Niguel, looking up at a Diebold alarm system. Everything was going according to plan. Now it was time to drive back to Youngstown and prep, get the tools and the crew he needed to pull this off.
There was me, James, and Chuck. Okay, that was the original thing, right?
Emil Dinzio was the leader. He also handled the alarms. James Dinzio, his brother, was the explosives expert. Chuck Mulligan, his brother-in-law, was responsible for acquiring and hiding the tools. Emil also enlisted his nephews, Harry and Ronnie Barber. Harry would be the getaway driver, and Ronnie, who lived in California and had a clean record, would be able to rent a condo nearby. Then there was Phil Christopher, a Cleveland burglar who was nicknamed Super Thief, who specialized in alarms, and his mobbed-up partner, Charlie Brockles.
A lot of people say to me, you know, where'd you get the nerve to do it? I don't know where I got it. It just became a routine thing. It just was simple, you know.
I met with the 78-year-old Super Thief on a cool autumn day at a suburban park about 30 minutes east of Cleveland. Phil Christopher is clean-shaven, wearing a black polo and a baseball cap that says Iron Workers Local. He grew up in Danny Green's old stomping grounds, Collinwood, and he remembers his childhood fondly.
Family life? Oh, my family life, my parents were wonderful. You know, I mean, they took care of me. There's nothing, even when I did something wrong, maybe it might have been their mistake, and when I did something wrong, they were there to back me up. I think I was around 16 or something like that. I was a doorman at this dry cleaner on St. Clair Avenue, where I was letting the guys in and out, where they have the dice games down in the basement or card games, you know, and then I was able to meet a lot of the the guys, the older guys, and one of them like took me under his wing, you know, and he taught me, a close friend of mine, how to open up a square door safe. So we were 16 years old, and it was 4 of us who went and we burglarized a drugstore and wound up getting like $1,700, and that was a lot of money back then, you know. And it just sort of like escalated after that.
Christopher says Cleveland and Youngstown were home to the best thieves in the world. So he watched and he learned about alarms, safes, and vaults.
If you learn from the best and you're mechanically inclined, but then you're gonna be the best of the best. You know, that's all to it.
I asked him how he met the Dinzio brothers. As expected, through a friend of his, a mobster named Ronnie the Crab Carabia. You might remember him from episode 2. He worked with Ray Ferrito on the Danny Green murder.
Ronnie introduced me to Amo and James Dinzio. So then later on, the Dinzios called me and they wanted me to come up to Youngstown, so I went up to Youngstown and spoke with them. And they told me that they had this score in California, you know, that they were looking at. So anyways, I says, well, it's all right, but I bring Charlie, my good friend, close friend. I mean, because I ran with a lot of guys, you know. And they said yes. So anyways, that's how it came to be with the Dinzios and how we went to California together.
And so the 7-man crew is assembled. And in March, they return to Laguna Niguel. The Barber brothers rent the condo. The Dinzio brothers map out the plan. And Chuck Mulligan rekindles an old friendship with a man named Earl Dawson who lives nearby, asking him if he can leave a 1962 Oldsmobile in his garage. This doesn't sound important now, but it will be. Soon, Friday night arrives. At 9 p.m., Mulligan heads to his lookout position. By 10:30, it's showtime. The others make their way to the bank. First step is beating the interior alarm by using a piece of copper wire. Second step is beating the exterior alarm by spraying a liquid styrofoam into the alarm box.
And then we stuck the plastic hose up in there, open the styrofoam up, and it goes shh, goes up around the bell clapper. Now it can't make no noise. So that's how you silence that.
When the alarm does not sound, they climb up to the roof and they start to drill.
The Dayton gearhead motor, that's all, Dayton gearhead motor, runs real quiet. And it turns 2,250 RPMs, so that's fast. And we use a core drill, not a straight drill, but we use a core, drill core out. And we put a strap around the drill, put 2 big handles like this here to hold it to low pressure, and that's what we use to drill the concrete. Real quiet, you couldn't hear it if you was outside. You just got just humming.
Once they cut into the roof, Emil starts to see thousands of hairline cracks running in every direction. This, he says, means the concrete is weak.
So we even had to cut down on the explosives a little bit, so when the blast goes off, it takes most of the concrete and everything right down into the vault.
Bingo, they're in. Now they drop into the vault. It's around 2 a.m.
We went straight for Nixon's boxes. We had the numbers. And we took that money out and down by the Pacific Coast Highway, like we had it all laid out on our minds to do.
Over the course of 3 nights, they empty 450 safety deposit boxes. The bank is closed for the weekend, so they don't have to worry about workers coming in or out.
Was there $30 million?
No, it was 12 million.
How much?
12.
12 million.
Yeah, but I wish it was 30.
When it comes to the total amount stolen, it seems the passage of time has clouded truth from reality. As we all know, stories often grow larger than life. Dinzio says they got Nixon's dirty money, plus another $800,000 from the boxes. Phil Christopher says they made out with the $30 million, and they never found Nixon's money.
After we got all the loot and we were done, we brought everything back to the condo that was rented. And started going through everything with cash and diamonds and gold, and the bearer bonds, and there was one bag. One bag was so big it looked like Santa Claus coming walking up the hill. That was just one bag, and there was two big bags, but that was the biggest one. And while we were sitting there in the condo, going through all the bearer bonds, it was totally unreal, the numbers, amounts of money on those bearer bonds. And we kept on adding it up, and we quit, I think, at 30 million, you know. There wasn't that much cash, but there was diamonds there that they were so big they looked phony, and there was a lot of gold.
That's not all these two disagree about. Even though 49 years have passed since that California heist, there is still bad blood between Dinzio and Christopher.
And then what about Phil Christopher? What was his job?
Nothing. Should have never had him there.
What about Charlie Brickell?
Yeah, nothing too, but should have never had him there.
Regardless, they got the cash, the bonds, and the jewels, and they head back to the condo. Then, and this is taken from courtroom testimony, Dinzio, Mulligan, and Barber drive back to Earl Dawson's house. Remember the place Mulligan hid the Oldsmobile earlier? They stashed their burglar tools in the trunk of the car. With that last piece of business taken care of, they need a way to transport the loot from California to Ohio. Remember, it's heavy and bulky. So Dinzio says they use a boat, hitched to a trailer. Then they drive to Las Vegas to launder the money. Some of it stays there, and some of it goes back to Youngstown. Meanwhile, the United California Bank opens on Monday morning, and when employees return to work, the vault's automatic time lock won't work. So the manager calls a locksmith, who tries unsuccessfully to release the lock. By mid-afternoon, the decision is made to break into the vault. The locksmith looks at the top of the vault and discovers the job has already been done for him. Bank officials are stunned. So too are the FBI agents. The heist made national news, not only for the scope of the take, but for the methodical tactics used by the Ohio burglars.
And I've also heard that you're the best burglar who ever lived. Would you agree with that?
That's probably true. Me and my brother.
What do you think made you guys so good?
But I never let nobody know what I was doing.
According to a 1972 newspaper report, investigators seemed to marvel at the burglars' impeccable work. No fingerprints or incriminating evidence left behind. It would take another 3 weeks before a complete accounting of the loss would take form. Many safety deposit box holders could not remember what was inside the boxes. Others could not be contacted. Officers also believe the bulk of the cash could have been in boxes for another reason, tax evasion, and those losses would, of course, never be reported. Meanwhile, the search for the burglars was taxing law enforcement, taking hundreds of man-hours, yet turning up very little evidence.
Did you think, we got away with it, we're not going to get caught?
Well, sure you do. You always think that.
2 months later, the Youngstown crew thinks they're untouchable. They get a little greedy. They decide to do another burglary, this time closer to home, at a bank in Lordstown, Ohio, directly across the street from a General Motors factory.
This guy from Canton, Ohio, from Warren, Ohio, he was a detective, and he was all right. And he came to me and he told me there's going to be $3 million there for the Lordstown paydays, right? So I told James about it. James and Chuck Mulligan, he's my brother-in-law. He says, "Man," he says, "we're fat. We don't got to do that. We got all that money." I say, "It's $3 million. That don't come around too often." I says, "Pretty fast we can do this," and we could, because we knew the bank vault. The bank vault was cement block and a 1-inch liner. We knew the alarm was Diebold. We knew all about it.
Again, they follow what worked in California. They spray the liquid styrofoam into the alarm, cut through the roof, and explode the vault. Once inside, Dinzio starts stuffing cash into a large duffel bag, and his smile turns to a frown. He counts the loot, $430,000. A decent haul, he says, but certainly not worth the risk, especially with what lies ahead. So
that's what was really our downfall, because that really intensified the FBI and the director and all of them to get them at all costs. They wound up it came out during the trial that They had 200 FBI agents on our case for 3 months.
The Ohio heist was so similar to the California heist, it was easy for the FBI to start connecting the dots. According to an affidavit made public later, when agents pulled the airline records, they saw Emil Dinzio and 4 of his friends flew from Cleveland to LA on March 15th, just days before the United California bank heist. It's something Phil Christopher still calls a dumb and avoidable mistake.
My friend Charlie forgot to bring the phony ID, and I went against my better judgment and still got on the plane. If I'd have had the phony ID, driver's license, like I wanted, I mean I had, but Charlie forgot to bring them, my name would have never been on the airline, you know.
But things were about to get even worse for the burglars. Using the airline tickets as a lead, FBI agents descended upon LAX, carrying their mugshots and interviewing taxi drivers.
And they wound up meeting this one taxi cab driver that we all got in the cab with, and well, Emil winds up giving him a $100 tip, so the guy remembered that. You know, I mean, a $100 tip for driving somebody from the airport, that's sort of unbelievable. You know, so that was a bad thing there, you know. So they found out our names on a manifest, and then they also found out where the cab driver drove us to. Then, you know, just one thing led to another after that. It was just...
Soon, agents checked a record of phone calls made by Chuck Mulligan. Included in that record was a call to Earl Dawson. They got a search warrant, discovered the 1962 Oldsmobile, popped open the trunk, and found what they were looking for, the burglar tools. And when they checked Ronnie Barber's phone records, they got another hit. Several calls to a Laguna Niguel phone number, the realtor who rented them the townhouse. When they searched inside, they found fingerprints in an unusual place, on dishes that were loaded into a dishwasher that was never turned on. To this day, Emil Dinzio is bitter, insisting the feds cheated and planted those prints.
But it was over 2 months later, dirty dishes in the dishwasher, forget it. In California especially, they're gonna sweat, they're gonna stink, it's gonna be all moldy. You ain't pulling nothing off of there.
Regardless, the FBI felt they had enough evidence to make a move. They arrested Phil Christopher. Inside his bedroom closet, they found a paper bag stuffed with $32,000. According to the prosecution, 2 loose bills were traced to a South Laguna woman who had noted the serial numbers of the memento currency. Other bills were traced to the Lordstown Bank. A few days later, an even larger amount of cash was found, this time, according to court records, by a 13-year-old boy who lived across the street from Emil Dinzio. He found a plastic jug packed with $98,000 buried near a tree in his yard. That same day, a federal grand jury issued an indictment charging Emil Dinzio.
Eventually, I think it was in June, is when you're arrested.
June 27th.
June 27th. You remember that date?
Yeah, June 27th.
What happened that day?
I pulls out the driveway. I always watch my mirror. I look in my mirror behind, and I see 2 cars come out of my neighbor's driveway. Lights flashing, blue light at me. I just drive normal. First thing they come swarming up, a couple cars come pulling out of side streets. They were set for me to leave because they know I wouldn't watch my house from my neighbor's house, no question about it. And stopped my car, guns all out on me, and said, "Emil Dinzio, FBI, you're under arrest." I jump out. That's all I did. Come up, hands behind my back like that there.
After Dinzio was arrested, court records say FBI agents armed with a search warrant descended upon his home, turning it upside down, looking for evidence. And when they left, according to the prosecution, they took a gold-plated silver dollar and a $20 bill, both of which were traced back to Laguna Niguel. During the month-long trial, dozens of witnesses are called and more than 250 exhibits are shown. While testimony dragged for several weeks, final arguments were relatively short. Soon the 7-man, 5-woman jury received the case, and after 2 full days of deliberations, they returned the verdict: guilty, on charges of conspiracy, larceny, and bank burglary. Emil Dinzio, Chuck Mulligan, and Phil Christopher are sentenced to 20 years. James Dinzio and Ronnie Barber get 15, and Charlie Brockles flips, becoming an unindicted co-conspirator, or as Dinzio calls him, a rat.
Set them right up with the FBI and them. You know, that's bad to do that. When you're a thief, right? I mean, you're supposed to be.
According to reports, the FBI is able to recover between $2 and $4 million. Phil Christopher serves 4 years for the heist. After he is paroled, he starts selling drugs. He is in and out of prison. In total, he spends 27 years behind bars. He meets his wife Marianne in 1998, and they are still married today. He says he leaves his life of crime behind and gets a job as an iron worker. He has 1 son, 2 stepdaughters, and 6 grandchildren. Author and historian Rick Perello, who you met in episode 1, would go on to write a book chronicling Phil Christopher's life, called Super Thief. As for Emil Dinzio, he served 8 years for the heist. When he got out, he went back to doing burglaries, and he went back to prison. In total, he spent 37 years locked up. Through it all, he says, his wife Linda, his daughters Melissa and Amy Jo, and his 2 grandchildren stood by his side. He also went on to write a book called Inside the Vault, and to this day, he believes the FBI agents who searched his home stole items with his fingerprints to frame him for the Laguna Niguel bank burglary.
As far as the FBI investigation, you don't feel they played fair?
Oh, I know they don't. When they steal that, are they playing fair? No. When they burglarize my garage, are they playing fair? No. Okay, they framed me to convict me.
Coming up next time on Bomb City, USA, the Irishman's lieutenant. While Danny Green did not survive, his right-hand man did. Kevin McTaggart is still in prison today, but at age 64, he wants out of his life prison sentence.
I think he paid his dues to society, and I don't believe that he done all those things that that they say, you know. But
and he has a cast of unusual advocates pushing for his release.
If you look at recent changes in federal sentencing laws, and you look at the particular circumstances of Kevin's case, including almost 40 years incarcerated, excellent records of conduct, of education, of service to his community, and other factors, you know, if I was one of the decision makers, yes, he would have my vote for release.
That part of the story next time on Bomb City, USA. This has been a production of WKYC Studios, reported and hosted by me, Rachel Polansky, produced by Phil Trexler, and edited by Gianni Catalano. Our digital director is Denise Pulverine, our digital producer is Megan Hambaugh, and our archival researcher is Matt Hine. Special thanks to Mickey Burns, Adam Miller, John Atkins, Susan Moses, Mike Leonard, Dominic Trickus, and Barbara Polansky. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Bomb City, USA with Rachel Polansky from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now so you never miss an update, and find more on WKYC.com and the WKYC app.